Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Team Cell Phone Compliance. Back when I started my second ever job, I was in a team of 3 plus a manager. We had a cell phone for emergencies which should rotate between team members. Instead, the manager kept it. It was fully paid for both calls and data, and she'd call us if anything happened that needed our attention. That manager and I started on the wrong foot, since I was interviewed by a different person for a different team and was moved the day before starting work. It had been about 4 months, and although she didn't like me because I wasn't all buddy-buddy with her like the rest of the team, I did my job well enough so that she couldn't do anything. One day after lunch, my roommate called panicking. He came home to a flooded kitchen and a dead fridge. My manager, just coming from lunch, caught part of the conversation and stood next to my cubicle until I was finished. She proceeded to scold me loud enough for the whole floor to hear, which was us and 4 other teams of 5 plus people each for using my phone at work. She was saying how it was unprofessional to use my phone at work, so I said I wouldn't use it at or for work anymore. She was so smug she didn't notice the second part, until later that week when she started blasting my phone at 2 AM for a work emergency and I never picked up or answered her texts. That was part 1 of my malicious compliance. The next day she was pissed, and during the daily team meeting I reiterated that my phone was mine to use and pick up. If she wanted me on call, she'd have to relinquish the team cell phone, for which she hated me even more. She had cancelled her line, so the supposed team phone had all her contacts, personal email, social networks, even personal photos and videos. When I noticed this, I brought the phone to IT for non-compliance. They wiped it for me and brought it back to the 3 work-related contacts on the contact list and 2 apps we use for checking those work emergencies. When I get it back at the end of the week, she had about 50 missed calls from different numbers. No contacts anymore, so they showed up only as phone numbers, and over 100 text messages in the same way. I stayed in that job for almost a year after this, with my manager speaking maybe 6 sentences to me during that time. I loved the quiet. The next story is called No Standby Policy. I used to work in IT support for a big financial institution. The company had firm policies on overtime, standby, etc. But management didn't like spending money. Occasionally, one of us would get called out overnight to dial in and fix a production issue, in which case we'd get reasonable overtime paid for the call. What wasn't reasonable was that we had no standby arrangements because management would have to pay us to be on standby, even if we weren't called. So one time, after getting 4 call-outs for 4 unrelated problems spread over one night, I decided enough was enough and bought an answering machine. The outgoing message was, "I can't come to the phone right now. Please leave a message." A few days later, at the daily team meeting, the manager chewed me out for ignoring a couple of phone calls, as another team member of the team had been obliged to fix a problem. I explained that since there was no standby policy, I didn't have to be available to answer the phone. He huffed and puffed a bit, but since it was his policy, technically his boss's policy, there was nothing he could do. The very next day's team meeting was interesting. A problem had come up overnight and I couldn't be contacted because answering machine. So Night Shift hitchhiked the next member of the team and got his answering machine. The third guy had been slow off the mark and picked up the phone, but promptly announced he would be buying an answering machine that same day. Boss went to the big boss, then came back and begged us to not use the answering machine for 1 month. Instead, we should keep a shared spreadsheet listing callouts, and the big boss would make a decision at month's end, so we agreed. It didn't take that long. Within 10 days we had a lucrative paid standby rota. The third story is called Laundry or Airfare Bill. Back in the 90s, I worked for an electronics manufacturer in the Midwest. We were bought out by a larger company located on the West Coast. As part of the buyout, the new owners wanted to move some of our production lines out west. But since it was for the time highly automated, they needed us software guys to come out and supervise. I spent several months out there sitting on my hands charging, I kid you not, $100 per hour. Remember, this was the 90s, because the company was so desperately bad at project management. Seriously, I was out there for 6 to 8 months and never saw a project plan of any sort. But that's not the malicious compliance here. Our general schedule was to fly out on Sunday or Monday, work all week, then fly home on Friday with a suitcase full of dirty clothes. After a couple of months, a coworker and I decided to stick around for a weekend and see the sights. I seem to recall that we paid for the hotel rooms, but memory fades. In any event, I didn't have enough clothes to get through our second week. So I sent my stuff into the hotel laundry and submitted the bill for reimbursement. Come next week, my expense report was personally delivered to me by a manager, who sternly informed me that they would not be paying for my laundry bills. Accordingly, I flew home every weekend after that. A round-trip ticket was easily 3 times as expensive as the hotel room plus laundry. Eventually, I returned home permanently and bought a new car with the money I'd saved from this adventure. They never did get our production line working correctly. Some say it's because their workforce was generally composed of people without high school educations and for whom English was a second language, versus our former workforce, which was somewhat better suited for the operation of the software. I think that set short the workers. The management was totally capable of tanking the company on their own. The next story is called Lazy Group Member. I just finished a big group project worth about 30% of our total grade. The groups were selected for us, so I didn't know anyone beforehand. So, like any other group, there's always a slacker who just piggybacks off of everyone else's work. This project spent the entire length of the term, and the slacker just did the absolute bare minimum or nothing at all for each of our deliverables. So here comes the end of the term, and we have to submit our final report, which had to include a video demo of our app, and this made up a significant portion of the marks. Of course, the slacker puts it off till the last possible minute to tell us he's not home and will be busy the day of submission. Our group was planning to record the last day, cause the rest of the project had to be finished to demo it. So obviously I'm set off, cause this dude is just being a huge pain, but I tell him, it's all good man, we'll just cover your part in the demo. He happily agrees, as he won't have to do anything once again. Here's the kicker. In the requirements of the demo, every member has to be in the recording or you won't get any marks for that portion. Clearly this guy didn't read the rubric, and so he thinks he's getting a good deal. If you didn't participate in the demo, you get a 0 for that portion. But this guy is gonna be confused why his marks are so much lower than the rest of us. The 5th story is called No Free Overtime for You. This was for a summer job in college. I and my roommate worked about a 15-minute drive from each other, in the same general direction from home, so we carpooled. One week I'd drive, drop him off at the front door at 8:30, go to my office, park at about 8:45, and it would be almost 9 by the time I got to my office. The parking lot wasn't that close and the building was big. I'd then leave at 5 and it was about 5:30 by the time I picked him up. The next week he'd drive and drop me off at 8:30, pick me up at 5:30. We were being paid to work from 9 to 5. This was office work, in IT working on individual projects, so the exact times we were in the office didn't really matter anyway. So the result of our carpooling arrangement was that every other week one of us would end up working an extra hour every day. I had no problem with that, because it saved gas, parking fees and made the commute more pleasant. One day my friend asked if I could leave work 15 minutes early the next day, as he had an evening commitment and had already cleared it with his boss. I said it should be no problem and asked my supervisor, "Hey, do you mind if I leave at 4:45 instead of 5 tomorrow?" Instead of agreeing, he said no, because we have set times and we have to start at 9 and finish at 5 and not 1 minute earlier or later. So I complied with that. The next day we both drove individually so that my friend could leave early. But the rest of the summer, whenever I showed up at 8:30, I read a book until it was 9 and stopped working at 5 on the dot. I then just either read or just stared at the wall while waiting for my ride. Not letting me leave 15 minutes early once cost him about 2 months of having free productivity for an hour from me every day. The next story is called Useless Rules. This story is from when I used to work at a gym. The owner of the company hired a new operations manager who made everyone miserable. She made rules that made no sense and would not listen to why they were not functional. For example, she made mandatory meetings that we were forced to clock out for. Also, she made a new rule that morning shift employees would be required to work 7 days a week, as opposed to 5, because she really didn't care for my morning shift coworker and me. One day, she announced a new rule stating that front desk employees would have to go over the intercom twice an hour to remind gym members to put their equipment away. I informed her that everyone wears headphones and would not hear this announcement, and she said she didn't care and to do it anyway. She told our manager to write a script for us to read from, as she believed we were too incompetent to come up with our own way of phrasing it. Well, seeing as this was now required, I told her I would absolutely make these announcements. Twice an hour I would pick up the intercom phone and in a very dull, confused voice I would stumble over the words on the script while sounding out the longer words. It would take me about 45 seconds to read a 2-sentence script. Since she believed I was not very intelligent, I just played dumb and acted like it was the best I could do. My coworker began to do the same thing, realizing she couldn't say we were reading it wrong on purpose. The members at the gym hated this manager and got a good laugh out of our petty antics towards her. Needless to say, we no longer were required to make announcements after 1 week. The last story is called Christmas Lights Compliance. About 20 years ago, my wife and I had just gotten married and we rented a condo where all the windows and sliding doors faced the parking area. My wife, to celebrate our first Christmas as a married couple, put up a white rope light on the railing on our 2-foot grilling area. It was a nice little gesture. That night, we went out to dinner and when we came home, found a letter under our door. The letter read, "All holiday lights must be removed immediately from the exterior portion of the condo. Christmas or other religious lighting is against HOA policy and failure to remove can result in fines and other legal actions." My wife felt horrible and I couldn't believe it. The owner of the condo had left a copy of the HOA regulations and I found a nice little loophole. Apparently, they could regulate lights on the exterior balcony/grilling area, but not the lights inside the condo. So that means it was game on. I took my wife immediately to the big box hardware store and picked up 2 fake Christmas trees, about 2,000 colored lights, a light ball and whatever holiday decoration I could find. Our condo had 3 windows and a sliding glass door. I filled up each one of those windows with lights, crisscrossing around the inside of the perimeter of the window, and one had the LED ball hanging in the center. The sliding door had the Christmas tree in full view, completely covered in lights and ornaments. Also, the sliding doors were full of Christmas lights. My electric bill must have tripled. When you came into the parking lot out of the condo complex, you saw a beacon of light full of Christmas spirit. And nothing could be said by the HOA snitch. Apparently, at the next board meeting, a proposed rule change was brought up to limit the amount of holiday lighting being shown through windows. It was quietly pointed out by another HOA board member that was an attorney that you probably could not regulate activities inside a person's dwelling. I moved out before next year, but I never received another notice. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.